Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Fallon and today I'm going to be working on the new puzzle mystery quilt from Cotton Cuts. So I'm actually going to be working on two of the different colorways. First I have the apple cider in small, and then I also have the churro colorway, and this one is large. So if you are working on a small or a large and you want to see how to work through the quilt, or if you just want somebody to sew along with, then you'll have the perfect opportunity to do that. If you are working on a small or large but just want to see how the other one is coming together, you'll be able to do that as well. What I'll do is down in the description of this video, I'll have some timestamps so you can skip to either the small colorway or the large. And then if you want to just skip to just see the pieces after they are completed, you can also do that. Just refer down to the description and I'll have timestamps there for you so you can jump to the part you're wanting to look at. So I'm going to get all these pieces organized. You see, I haven't opened the little bags yet. Looks like there's some extra goodies in there. So I'm going to get everything organized so that I can work through it, and we'll start working on the small first and then the large after that. So let's get sewing. Okay, so now that I have everything organized, you can see here on our pamphlet, this is something that you will want to keep your hands on because it'll tell you what each fabric is labeled. So you can see like this one here is fabric B, for example, this one's fabric A. And when you're referring to your pattern instructions, it just has different shades. That's not really going to be helpful because, you know, your F, your fabric may not be the darkest one, even though it looks like it is. So it's important to keep track of this so that you make sure you're sewing the correct fabrics together. So when I open this up, it'll also tell me how many of each one you should have. So for example, this is my fabric A. I should have 12 of these triangles here. If you don't have 12, make sure you let Cotton Cuts know. They let you know where to message them and let them know you're missing anything. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing is sewing a triangle B to a triangle D, and then look at the instructions here because it'll show you which way to press them. So we're going to be doing that and making 4, and then we're going to be sewing that onto our square that is fabric B, so these here. So I'm going to be doing that first, and then it'll also show you the rest of everything that we're going to be doing. But first we're going to be sewing a B to a D and then sewing that on to a B square, and I'm going to follow all the pressing instructions. So let's get sewing. All right, so I have my 4 sewn together, and then I'm able to see that I'm going to make this into a larger square. So take 2 for each one, So we're making 2 of these, and then you'll see your D fabric is going to kind of face together and make a bow that's on the diagonal. If you've followed the pressing instructions on your pattern, you'll be able to nest your seams in the center because you'll have them each facing a different direction. So I just use my fingers to kind of feel, make sure they're lined up, and I'm going to put a pin in here. And I'm going to put one in both sides of the seam so that I'm holding the folded over seam down on both sides so that it hopefully won't shift when I go to sew. So I have 2 of these. So as I lay them out, I'm going to refer back to my pattern to make sure it looks the way it does on my pattern. Fold them together. Like I said, I'm going to feel with my fingers and make sure the seam is lined up nicely, and I'm going to put a pin on each side. So before I head over to the sewing machine though, since I have these pinned, I'm likely not going to accidentally move them. I know that I'm sewing a 1/4 inch seam along here on both of these. I'm going to look at my pattern and see if there's anything else I can take to the sewing machine with me. And it looks like I can. I'm going to be sewing an A triangle to a D triangle. So here are my D fabrics, here are my A, and we're going to be making 8 of these. So I need to get 8 that are going to get sewn together, and they're going to be right sides together. So I'm going to lay them out and get them ready over at the sewing machine. So right sides together. 1, all right, so I have 8 of these that are ready to go. So I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along this diagonal edge of the triangle. And then I see that I'm also going to be having some A and F triangles that are going to be sewn together, and 4 of those. So here's my F fabric. I have the A. So I'm going to do the same thing, put these right sides together. And I'll take these over to the sewing machine and sew them. Okay, so I have my larger segment finished. I have 2 of those and they are pressed per the pattern. And I have my 4 triangles that we're saving for later, half square triangles now. And then I have my 8 half square triangles that I'm going to be using in this next step. So this is step 5. So I'm going to lay 4 of these rectangles out because we're going to be making 4 in this step. And what we're going to be doing is taking these half square triangles, and the same color fabric is going to be lining up with the rectangle. So these are all going to get sewn along the side with a 1/4 inch seam, and then along the other side afterward we will sew the next one on. With our other half square triangles, the F fabric we're going to be bringing together so that it kind of looks like we're making a flying geese. So we're going to make 4 of these, or 2. Sorry, we're going to make 2 of these. We have 4 that we're going to bring together and make 2. All right, so I'm going to bring these all over to the sewing machine to sew 1/4 inch along the first side, and then we'll add the other half square triangle on to the other side. We will press all these and see what we're doing next. All right, so now that we have the step 5 pieces sewn together, we can sew them onto the side of our squares that we completed earlier. So what I like to do is I like to make sure I refer back to my color fabric guide and make sure I have everything in the right place before I figure out where I'm sewing these segments onto. So we kind of want this bow to be coming together here, our squares on the top right and lower left, and see that our fabric A's are away from the square. So I'm going to lay it right side together, and I'm going to put 2 pins in just so that when I go over to the sewing machine, I don't get it mixed up. So I'm going to put one on that side. So we're going to be putting one on both sides of the square. So I have everything lined up and put them right side together and put 2 pins in for bringing over to the sewing machine. So on my next block, see that the square's on the top right, one on the lower left. Same thing, I'm going to set these up for sewing. Okay, so I have those that I can sew along the sides of, but I'm also going to get my next step ready. So this is down on step 8. So I have these triangles pressed that I created, and then we're going to be looking for our fabric A squares. And we're going to be sewing one along each side of this segment. I could make a quilt with just these colors. This plum and then the plum kind of dashed lines creating a design here is just amazing. All right, then we're also going to be adding on this C fabric to the ends. So I'll be laying right sides together, sewing a 1/4 inch seam. And then I'm going to do that along both sides and then add on the orange to the ends as well. So I'm heading over to the sewing machine. It is so fun seeing all these colors come together. Oh my goodness. All right, so we have everything pressed and we're just to finalize our first clue from the So Sweet Puzzle Mystery Quilt. I am going to take the segment that we made in step 8 and join it here. So we kind of have our triangle facing up the little house roof. I'm going to line it up, put a few pins in, and go to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam. So in this clue, we will have 2 of these finished. So here's the first one. Then we'll do the same with this second one. Then I'll be working on my Churro colorway, which is a large size quilt next. All right, let's go sew these and see how it looks. All right, so here is my small apple cider. So we have these 2 segments that are completed. So these are going to be labeled as, let's see, I guess just block 1. So what I normally do to keep them straight is I usually will just keep them inside of my pattern for clue 1. I'm going to keep this all together in my box that I have for these. But isn't this beautiful? This colorway is just gorgeous with the oranges and plums. We have softer colored oranges. I love this. I'm so excited to see it come together. So the only fabric we haven't used yet is fabric E, but it looks like we do have some of that color pulled through. So I can't wait to see this color come into play and see how it all looks together. So let's set this to the side. I'm gonna pull out here my Churro. So this is also the So Sweet Spring 2022 Puzzle Mystery Quilt. It is my first clue. And this Churro color line is Bookish from Art Gallery Fabrics. So let's pull all this out. And I'm gonna get it organized. I did in both of these get some pins, so I'm set on pins for a while. And then I have some fabric here so I can make a little mug rug. Isn't that cute? Sew a latte. I'm gonna have to do that. So I'm gonna get all this fabric organized. Ooh, we have a heart block for our February 2022 block. I'll have to make that as well. Okay, so I keep getting distracted. I'm so excited about this one because I love this line of fabric. So let me set these. Are those the same? Okay, so one of the main reasons I really wanted to do a large and a small is just to see the differences in what we make in each. Are the sizes a little bigger, or do we have extra things to do? So for this one, we do have extra little blocks to do. It's more of this center block, but just in a different colorway. So I'll be making 8 of these. And then we'll be having 2 of these that are exactly what we did with the apple cider colorway. It's just in this one. So it looks like we'll just be adding on a couple different extra blocks for the larger one right now. So let's see. It looks like first we're going to be making those 8 blocks that we did not make in the previous one. So I'm going to be joining together A and D fabrics in these larger colors. So this is the A, and then D is this one. So we're going to need 16 of each to be able to make 8 of those blocks. So 1, 2, Okay, so that is all of those. So these are going to come together, and then we need 16 of the book backgrounds to complete this block. So those will all be going together for that. But I do need some of these to make the next block. So I need 4 of these that will be paired with these. So first what I'm going to be doing is sewing all of these together, right sides together along the seam, and then the same with these two, right sides together along the seam. I'm going to be creating 4 of these and 16 of these. All right, now that we have our squares sewn onto our half square triangles, I have them also pressed so that our seam is going in opposite directions so we can nest them. So we'll bring these right sides together. We can put a pin in to secure them if needed at the seam. Bring them over to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam. We'll be doing the same with our units that have the B and D fabric with the squares. We'll only be making 2 of these. We'll be making 8 of the other ones. Definitely a little more to construct with these larger quilt puzzle mysteries. So right sides together again, sew a 1/4 inch seam. While we're over at the sewing machine, we can get a few other things ready as well. If you remember, we sewed those A and F fabrics together to make half square triangles. We're going to bring them together where the F fabric kind of makes, like, it looks like a flying geese to me. So we're going to bring those together and sew a 1/4 inch seam. We'll have 2 of those. And then we can also take our A and D fabric that we made into half square triangles and attach them onto the ends of our rectangles here that are the D fabric. So we'll kind of put them on each side so that the D fabric meets with the rectangle. So I'll sew one side on at a time, then add the other onto the other side over at the sewing machine. So let's get sewing. All right, so I have everything all pressed. You can see on these rectangles we pressed in, the triangles we pressed to the left. Now for the 8 combos here with the 2 squares and the 2 half square triangles, we are finished with these, so I'm going to set them to the side. And then we're going to move over the 2 that we have here with the square to the top right, square to the bottom left, and we're going to be sewing these strips onto either side. So one on the left and one on the right of both. Now, while we're over at the sewing machine, we can take these segments that we sewed the A and F half square triangles together, and we're going to be adding on the book fabric. So this is fabric A. So while we're at the sewing machine, we're going to sew one onto each side. And then we have fabric, I don't remember what this one is, C. We have fabric C that is going to go on the very end of these strips. So one on each side. Getting kind of full over here. All right, so first I'm going to sew these long strips that we constructed in step 5 onto each side. And then we'll start sewing together our final strip section for step 8. So the books first and then the floral fabric second. All right, let's get sewing. All right, so I have the last 2 segments all ready to sew together. You have 2 of each. So we're going to put the triangle with the wider end here that we created right side down. I'm going to put a few pins in so I make sure this longer strip doesn't stretch too much. And then we'll just be sewing a 1/4 inch seam across here, press it, and our large first clue for this puzzle mystery quilt will be all done. And we'll be having to wait around for next month to see what the next clue is. We get these shipped once a month. And if you look inside your pamphlet that you got, it'll tell you that they ship the first Friday of each month. So it'll tell you when you'll be getting them, which is nice to have that handy just in case you forget. So, because I know I would, I would forget when they're shipping. And hopefully the Postal Service gets a little more accurate on their shipping as well. A little quicker, right? So we can get these and work on them faster. All right, so I'm going to sew across, and then I'm going to be pressing it down to the bigger section of this first clue. All right, so here is my first clue from the Churro 2022 Spring Puzzle Mystery Quilt. So this is the So Sweet Puzzle Mystery Quilt, and this is the large quilt. So I have these eight here and 2 of these. So what I like to do is I like to take the pattern and put them together and store it in my basket. You'll see the squares here are 1A labeled and then 1B for when I put this pattern together. And I'm going to keep this since it has my markings telling me what each fabric is. And just as a recap, here is the apple cider. And this is the small puzzle. So again, I'm going to store these together so that when I have the final clue, I can finish these up. All right, let me know in the comments what colorway you are doing, which colorway of mine you like the best. I'm so excited to see how these come together. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications so next month you can see the next clue for these puzzle mystery quilts. Bye.